Imagine this. You've just given birth to your premature baby. You've been anxiously waiting for this moment, and finally you're about to hold your little one for the first time. But then, the unthinkable happens. A nurse approaches you with devastating news. Your baby has suffered a fracture. In that moment, your world is shattered. The hospital, a place you trusted to protect your child, has become the source of unimaginable pain. This was the reality for several families, whose babies, born too soon and already fighting for their lives, were subjected to harm in the very place they should have been safe. What was meant to be a sanctuary turned into a nightmare.
This nurse is accused of intentionally injuring premature babies, breaking their legs.
NICU court. 26-year-old Erin Elizabeth Ann Strotman was arraigned today in connection to that.
Babies were found with serious injuries, broken bones. Enrico,
remember her being in the room. She was friendly, she answered questions, but she didn't stay and talk like the other NICU nurses did. She wasn't family like the other NICU nurses were.
Summer of 2023, 4 infants in the neonatal intensive care unit suffered unexplained fractures. First incident, both legs of a premature baby fractured, likely caused by excessive force and mishandling. Second incident, skull fracture, possibly from inappropriate handling of the head. Third incident, broken ribs, possibly from squeezing or improper positioning. Fourth incident, arm fracture, possibly from yanking of the arm. 3 more babies were reported to have non-accidental trauma from August to December. It was becoming clear this was no coincidence. The hospital began an internal investigation. Medical staff reviewed records, spoke with multiple nurses in the NICU, and examined security footage. This is how they caught on to the monster Erin Strotman. The footage revealed Erin handling the infants in ways that were inconsistent with proper care. At times, she'd been seen alone with babies right before their injuries. No footage has been released to the public yet. Information is scarce due to the ongoing investigations, but reports say that when questioned, Erin's response were vague, and her demeanor was increasingly defensive. It was clear she was struggling to explain the injuries, especially as evidence mounted. With the evidence mounting, the hospital administrators made the difficult decision to involve law enforcement. Erin Strotman was arrested on charges of child abuse and malicious wounding. When the news broke, the community was in shock. Parents who had trusted Erin with their most vulnerable children now had to face the horrifying reality that she had betrayed that trust. The arrest and legal process. After Erin Strotman was arrested, the case quickly gained national attention. She was charged with multiple counts of felony child abuse, including malicious wounding, after being accused of intentionally injuring premature infants under her care. The severity of the charges reflected the seriousness of the allegations. Initial court appearance. Erin's initial court appearance was filled with tension. She was formally charged, and her defense attorneys entered a plea of not guilty. The case was now in the hands of the legal system, and the evidence against her was substantial. The prosecution's case. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the medical evidence and security footage from the NICU. Experts testified that the injuries sustained by the infants were not accidental and were inconsistent with standard medical care. These injuries included broken bones and fractures, which experts argued could not have been caused by natural circumstances. Medical professionals testified that the injuries were consistent with child abuse, and the timeline of the injuries matched the times when Erin was alone with the babies. 3. Erin's defense. Erin's defense team tried to argue that the injuries were accidental or that they were caused by medical conditions the infants may have had. However, this defense was weak in light of the mounting evidence, including the footage showing Erin in the NICU during the times when the injuries occurred. There was also the argument that Erin had been overwhelmed by the stress of working in the NICU, but this did not fully explain the pattern of injuries or the deliberate nature of the incidents. Witness testimonies. Other nurses and medical staff were called to testify about Erin's behavior in the NICU. Some witnesses described her as a competent nurse, while others raised concerns about her interactions with the infants. However, no one had witnessed her actively causing harm, which made the circumstantial evidence crucial in the case. On social media, there are some messages leaked from Erin suggesting possibly drug abuse. She had hinted the feeling of being on coke, but she's been tested and tested -5. Security footage. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was the security footage from the NICU. It showed Erin in the room with the babies during the times when injuries occurred. The footage was reviewed frame by frame to show how the babies were handled and the possible moments when harm could have been inflicted. Potential outcomes and sentencing. If Erin is convicted, the legal consequences could be severe. Given the nature of the charges and the harm caused to vulnerable infants, she could face a lengthy prison sentence, potentially decades, depending on the number of charges and the severity of the injuries. The maximum penalty for malicious wounding in Virginia can be up to 20 years in prison. Sentencing factors. If convicted, the judge would likely consider the number of victims, the severity of the injuries, and Erin's prior record, if applicable. The emotional impact on the families of the infants would also play a role in the sentencing phase. Possible plea deal. There's also the possibility of a plea deal, though this seems less likely given the strong evidence against her. A plea deal could reduce the charges in exchange for a guilty plea, but this would depend on the prosecutor's strategy and Erin's willingness to cooperate. Community impact. The hospital faced significant backlash for not catching the abuse earlier, and some questioned whether more could have been done to prevent the injuries. The case raised awareness about the vulnerabilities of infants in NICUs and the need for stricter monitoring of healthcare professionals. Luckily, the babies who fell victim to this monster are recovering quick. Despite having a physical scares, they are healing from the abuse they endured, and thanks to quick action taken by medical professionals, many of the infants already made remarkable progress,